My name is Colin Tarbert, and I serve as President and CEO of the Baltimore Development Corporation. The Baltimore Development Corporation, or BDC, is the economic development agency of the City of Baltimore. This recording is comprised from voices of Baltimoreans that include BDC staff members, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and residents. Our collective goal is to advance Baltimore together. About Baltimore Together. Baltimore Together is a public-private initiative led by the Baltimore Development Corporation to support the creation of a common vision of inclusive economic growth in our city. Through a thoughtful and intentional process, a diverse group of stakeholders developed the following vision for Baltimore Together. Our vision: Baltimore will be a global model of how to create an urban economy that is based on diversity, inclusion, and resiliency, and uplifts historically excluded Baltimoreans while attracting investment, businesses, and people committed to contributing to an equitable economy. We will build a strong and inclusive economy by recognizing our city's history of racialized economic disinvestment and the damage systemic racism has done to our Black residents and the greater community. We will ensure economic opportunity for people of color by taking advantage of Baltimore's many assets to implement strategies and policies that invigorate Black and Brown-owned businesses in growth sectors and build generational wealth in Baltimore's communities of color. Our process to date has involved several steps. Various economic information and data were shared with stakeholder work groups for feedback. Workgroup meetings were followed by recap sessions to give stakeholders a chance to review summaries of those conversations. This interim report summarizes the work of Baltimore Together to date, presenting findings developed through this process, outlining strategies that emerged, and detailing an initial set of tactics to fulfill those strategies. 290 people participated in the Baltimore Together process. 10 workgroups held 27 meetings. BDC and workgroups collected and analyzed data. Participants reviewed other cities' plans. This is an interim report, not a final plan. The Baltimore Together team of stakeholders will develop more detailed tactics and plans after receiving input on this document from a wide variety of constituents. A process of engagement will be designed and implemented to ensure access to the report. That will lead to creation of a final Baltimore Together plan known as the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, CEDS, that will be released in June 2021. Along with the plan, Baltimore Together will create a website to share the strategy and progress with the public over the next 5 years. The timeline for completion of the strategic plan is provided on page 32. As the first phase of this planning process concluded, Baltimore, the nation, and the world were hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has, of necessity, transformed this process from one focused on inclusive economic growth to one concerned with inclusive economic recovery and long-term growth. This interim report outlines some of the key steps Baltimore City has taken to respond to the crisis and help businesses weather the challenge. We will continue to assess the economic impact of the pandemic, act to mitigate disruptions, and respond to the longer-term changes in the economy that have been driven by or accelerated by the pandemic. Appendix 2 provides an overview of key steps taken by Baltimore City government and its partners to support economic recovery. Footnote 1. An application for investment assistance under the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration, EDA's, Public Works or Economic Adjustment Assistance Programs requires a CEDS. EDA maintains that successful economic development efforts are based on a CEDS roadmap to diversify and strengthen regional economies. EDA has provided funding to assist with this CEDS effort. Quote, "The plan needs to have buy-in from stakeholders. It's important that there is a strategy in delivering the message for economic growth, which includes ensuring that the companies in the private sector are committed to helping create a space of inclusivity and that benefactors know where to find the resources to help them grow." Unquote. Dietra Miller, M&T Bank.
A commitment to racial equity. Research by the Brookings Institution and others indicates that cities with fewer economic disparities and greater opportunities to participate in the mainstream economy are more resilient, dynamic, and vibrant than cities that have wide economic gaps. Baltimore Together understands, however, that racist policies and practices have generated wide racial disparities in a range of economic measures, especially including the inhibition of wealth creation by Black Baltimoreans and other people of color. Baltimore Together appreciates the critical need to fully confront this legacy of systemic racism, joining many other institutions, nonprofits, businesses, and individuals in this work. Baltimore cannot truly thrive unless we create genuine opportunity to succeed in the workplace, start successful businesses, and contribute to an economy that works for all. Baltimore's economic history is tied tightly to persistent racist and segregationist policies and practices that directed Baltimore's trajectory and contributed to its decline in recent decades. For centuries, Baltimore was legally segregated by race. In the 20th century, explicit zoning laws followed by redlining policies intentionally divided Baltimore into black and white. Redlining hurt Black Baltimoreans as well as other racial and religious minorities who were shut out of homeownership and other opportunities. Investment flowed into white areas while Black communities were left behind. Opportunities for economic advancement were also shaped by race. Black Baltimoreans were far less likely to be able to buy a home in thriving communities, obtain a fair, affordable mortgage, or send their children to high-quality schools. Black businesses also faced roadblocks, shut out from access to capital, and prohibited from joining Baltimore's business elite and taking advantage of those network connections. This intentional history of race-based exclusion has been a key driver to the challenges facing Baltimore. And today, we see stubborn disparities between white and Black Baltimore in key measures such as household income, wealth, business ownership, and incarceration. Baltimore is largely segregated by race, evidence of the lingering effects of past law and practices and the impacts of systemic racism. Research by Brookings Institution, Raj Chetty, and others also show a stark difference in opportunities between white and Black residents for intergenerational economic mobility. We have also seen stark evidence that the negative health and financial impact of the coronavirus is falling more heavily on African American and Hispanic communities, creating additional challenges for Baltimore. During the summer of 2020, we have seen a sustained and inspiring demonstration of support for racial justice in Baltimore and throughout much of the country. We believe this national momentum will help us address longstanding inequities in Baltimore and our commitment to this priority. Though it may be hard, unpopular, or costly, we'll move our city forward to create an inclusive economy for all. Our commitment to racial equity will be informed by history, deep community engagement, real data, and regular reviews of culture, practice, and policy.
Baltimore Today. The research phase produced important findings and data points, both positive and challenging, that have formed the baseline for this economic development report. Key findings include these. Before the COVID-19 outbreak, Baltimore's economy was growing at a competitive pace. While Baltimore was slower to come out of the effects of the Great Recession since 2009, it picked up steam since 2010, and job growth in Baltimore City had been close to that of the surrounding region and the state. Since COVID-19 hit in March of 2020, more than 40,000 Baltimore workers have applied for unemployment. Due to a higher concentration of workers in the hardest-hit industries, both retail and hospitality, Baltimore City saw a more severe uptick in the unemployment rate initially and is recovering at a slower rate than the Baltimore region as a whole. Job growth has been largely dependent on big companies and institutions. While Baltimore City is home to 12,500 business establishments, the vast majority, 11,700, or 93.6%, are small firms with fewer than 50 employees. And 6,550, or 50%, of these businesses have fewer than 5 employees. That doesn't count the thousands of sole proprietors, businesses with no employees, that call Baltimore home. While small businesses dominate in number, they are not growing at a pace sufficient to drive growth. Between 2010 and 2017, 95% of net new jobs were created by employers with more than 500 employees. Minority business accounts for a small share of Baltimore City business revenue. Despite census data indicates that well over half of Baltimore City's privately held businesses are owned by African Americans, Latinos/Hispanics, Asians, and American Indians, these businesses account for a small share of Baltimore City business revenue. Black and brown-owned businesses account only for 12% of Baltimore City's total business revenue. Racial disparities are wide. Black residents trail white Baltimoreans in several key measures, including income and job growth. In 2018, the median personal income for whites was $54,000 compared to $32,000 for blacks, figures that include only employed individuals. And the average monthly earnings for whites was $6,531 compared to $3,688 for black Baltimoreans. Baltimore's population is becoming more educated, with more people earning higher incomes. According to most recent census estimates, the number of residents with a bachelor's degree or higher increased by 41,000, or 42%, between 2010 and 2018. And Baltimore added over 18,000 households earning more than $75,000, while the number of households making less than $75,000 dropped. The sharpest decline occurred among very low-income households earning less than $25,000 per year. Baltimore is still seeing population loss. Baltimore is the only major East Coast city that has continued to lose population in the 21st century. Many factors contribute to this trend, including challenges related to public transportation, tax rate, public education, and crime. Considering the sharpest population decline is occurring among low to moderate income households, it's evident that many are leaving Baltimore City in search of opportunity elsewhere. In total, Baltimore City's population declined by roughly 18,000 residents. The vast majority of this population loss is attributable to net outmigration of black residents, as the black population declined by about 22,000 versus a decline of 3,500 in the white population. The population of residents identifying as other races ticked up modestly, but not enough to offset total population loss.
About the Baltimore City labor shed. Baltimore City is not only an employment center, it is part of a regional labor market. Some residents from outside Baltimore work at jobs in the city. City residents may work inside Baltimore or commute to jobs elsewhere. A brief summary is provided below. All data comes from the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics Program of the U.S. Census Bureau. As of 2018, there were a total of 260,175 private sector jobs in Baltimore City. Of these, 68% were filled by people who live outside Baltimore City, and 32% were filled by city residents. Residents from across the state commute into Baltimore City to work, with most living in other Baltimore metropolitan counties. Of all the workers within Baltimore City, 32% live within Baltimore City, 32% live in Baltimore County, 8% from Anne Arundel County, 6% from Howard County, and 5% from Harford County. Among Baltimore City residents, 197,000 were employed in private sector jobs, 57% in jobs located outside of Baltimore City, and 43% located within the city. City residents are employed in a wide area. Of employed city residents, 26% work in Baltimore County, 9% in Anne Arundel County, 6% in Howard County, and 3% in Montgomery County. As of 2018, 2,745 persons commuted from Baltimore City to Washington, D.C. to work, while 1,685 commuted from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore City to work. U.S. Census, LEHD.
Imagining a stronger Baltimore. Along with a review of data and conditions in Baltimore today, the Baltimore Together process provided the opportunity to imagine a stronger Baltimore economy in the future, an economy forged in equity that takes advantage of the city's many assets. Summarized here, this vision drove the development of this report's outcomes, strategies, and action steps. We imagine creating in Baltimore a truly equitable economy, closing racial gaps in income, employment, business ownership, and access to capital to make sure Black Baltimoreans have true opportunities to succeed in the workplace or as entrepreneurs. Beyond the traditional economic sectors, an equitable Baltimore will provide ample support for creatives with affordable office and studio space and access to technical business assistance, especially for artists of color. To create this vibrant, equitable economy, Baltimore must think big, build on its strengths, and work to be a world-class leader in key areas. Baltimore could become the cancer diagnostic capital of the world, a global leader in social enterprise, and a national center for global supply chain solutions to capitalize on the city's major logistics assets. This thriving city will have an innovation ecosystem that fuels a strong small business sector by expanding access to technical support and capital, with a special emphasis on businesses owned by Baltimore City residents, Black entrepreneurs, women, and immigrants. Baltimore will support promising emerging businesses by ensuring they have access to government programs, financial resources, and mentors. At the same time, Baltimore will strengthen its workforce training system, funding training and models such as apprenticeships to give workers the opportunity to attain jobs and careers, paying a family-supporting wage while supporting the needs of growing entrepreneurs and established employers. An economically stronger Baltimore will have a growing population by making its taxes competitive and providing new incentives to attract and retain residents. At the same time, Baltimore will continue to attract visitors and reinvigorate the tourism and hospitality sector through renovations to the Baltimore Arena, modernizing the convention center, redeveloping the Pimlico Racecourse, and revisioning the Inner Harbor and Harbor Place. And Baltimore will flip the script and devote resources and creativity to tell its true story, a unique and powerful narrative about a livable, culturally rich, and innovative city committed to an equitable future. To achieve these critical goals, Baltimore must develop a new collaboration for growth, undoing the habit of key players working on economic and workforce development in isolation. A new commitment could bring together economic, community, and workforce development organizations, partners, and stakeholders to discuss, collaborate, and coordinate implementation of the vision, strategies, and progress of the Baltimore Together initiative. A hallmark of this will be transparency and accountability, ensuring the public and all stakeholders can monitor progress and hold each other accountable.
Baltimore Together strategies. The Phase 1 process served to highlight 4 overarching strategies for Baltimore Together's economic development strategy. Work together, break down barriers, foster collaboration, and increase efficiency. Invest in people and places. Create opportunities for all through strategic investments. Build from strength. Take advantage of Baltimore's assets to strengthen our economic future. Compete to succeed. Work with partners to address competitive imbalance and address major challenges.
Baltimore Together strategies. Work together. Baltimore is home to many important civic leaders, business groups, major nonprofit institutions, foundations, and engaged individuals. But far too often, these entities and people work separately without strong coordination with others. A key goal is to foster new and more effective collaboration and cooperation among public and private partners to look for opportunities to incent consolidation and develop a new culture of working together to fix key economic systems. Within this broad strategy, several priorities emerged. Align efforts around the Baltimore Together plan. Baltimore stakeholders must improve the alignment among the business community, philanthropy, nonprofits, communities, and governments to support public and private initiatives that are directly related to implementing the Baltimore Together initiative. Vast resources are being used to support Baltimore's growth, but the delivery system is fragmented and inefficient. Time and resources are being wasted. BDC will continue to anchor the work of Baltimore Together and create an online platform that clearly communicates the vision, goals, and actions to build Baltimore's economic future and connect organizations doing similar efforts. This platform will organize efforts, track progress, and communicate success. Next step, build an online platform for Baltimore Together. We must reevaluate the role of various economic, workforce, and business development organizations. These include BDC, Greater Baltimore Committee, the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore, Downtown Partnership of Baltimore, Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore, Visit Baltimore, Live Baltimore, Baltimore City Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Baltimore Black Chamber of Commerce, the Maryland LGBT Chamber of Commerce, the Mayor's Office of Small Minority and Women-Owned Business Development, Mayor's Office of Employment Development, Baltimore's Workforce Development Board, nonprofits, and foundations. The Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs could provide technical assistance to better meet the linguistic and cultural needs of immigrant business owners. With so many organizations, overlap and duplication are inevitable without strong coordination. Members and stakeholders can collaborate more effectively, align resources, and produce better outcomes. Next step, recommend that BDC and MOED take the lead in coordination with the Mayor's Office to convene economic and workforce development organizations, partners, and stakeholders on a semi-annual basis to discuss the vision, strategies, and progress of Baltimore Together. Focus to include college-level talent retention programs, organizations, and collaborations. Grassroots and community partners will be included in the dialogue and convening. Next step. The Greater Baltimore Committee should convene local economic and workforce development leaders when major policies are being proposed or the need to create such policies are evident, especially at the state or regional level. This is also an opportunity to expand the metropolitan area's focus on economic development by fostering expanded collaboration between regional entities. For example, the EAGB is an effective convener of regional jurisdictions but focused on economic development marketing, not economic policy. And the Baltimore Metropolitan Council has been effective in organizing regional approaches to policy, but mainly has focused on transportation, workforce, and housing issues. Next step. Secure commitments from regional partners to incorporate Baltimore Together goals into their respective strategies and report metrics of actions and outcomes. BDC and local economic development stakeholders need to approach economic development regionally while ensuring benefits for Baltimore City residents and businesses. In a positive step, Baltimore County and the Baltimore City are exploring partnering across jurisdictions by considering the creation of a regional economic development district with the U.S. Economic Development Administration. Next step, advance the creation of a regional economic development district. It would be amazing if the final solution was BDC, Baltimore government, and all the other quasi-government institutions working together to remove barriers to make development possible. This was offered by Ms. Bree Jones of Parity Homes. Create a system of shared data and metrics. Baltimore City lacks important data about key industries that are vital to our economy. making it difficult to plan effectively, allocate resources, and track progress. We need to build a city and regional database of key indicators on inclusive economic growth that all groups, public, private, nonprofit, foundations, can measure individual programs and efforts against. Next step, BDC, Baltimore City Departments of Finance and Planning, MOED, Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business, Baltimore Metropolitan Council, Maryland Philanthropy Network, Jacob France Institute, Maryland Department of Commerce, and EAGB will meet to determine how this centralized database might be created and enlist assistance from partners that may assist with populating and maintaining the data. Next step, discuss with EAGB the role of assisting Baltimore Together in developing a regional indicators dashboard and monitoring change to help measure our region's economic competitiveness. Reimagine and rebuild the local small business ecosystem. A startling fact that emerged in Phase 1 is that for the period 2010 to 2017, virtually all new job growth in Baltimore occurred in businesses and institutions with 500 or more employees. It's clear that Baltimore's small business development systems need improved coordination, increased accountability, and a more thoughtful allocation of resources. Organizations such as the Emerging Technology Center, a subsidiary of BDC, and the City of Baltimore Small Business Resource Center has provided technical assistance. SBRC alone has assisted over 1,500 small businesses annually. However, lack of staff and underfunding of this vital resource have muted its impact. A key is to provide more support for Black and Brown-owned businesses. African American-owned businesses are more likely to hire employees of color and returning citizens. Black entrepreneurs give back to their communities through donations of time, money, and services, and often play key leadership and mentorship roles that invite other workers of color into the world of self-employment and business ownership. However, Black and Brown-owned businesses have been disproportionately and negatively impacted by discriminatory policies and practices and tend to face challenges that other businesses do not. These businesses often lack access to capital, business networks, mentors, and other vital support. As a result, Black and Brown-owned businesses have not been able to fulfill their potential. While over half of Baltimore's privately held businesses are owned by African Americans, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, and American Indians, these businesses account for only 12% of Baltimore's total business revenue. A recent effort to better align the small business ecosystem in response to COVID-19 has shown promising results and could be a model to build on moving forward. Under this effort, BDC and the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business entered into a partnership with the Baltimore Small Business Support Fund, a coalition of 9 foundations led by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, to coordinate the delivery of technical assistance primarily to businesses owned by African American, Latino, Hispanic, and women in underserved parts of Baltimore City seeking access to capital and financial assistance. The foundation's support public-private initiative includes a network of 19 organizations, 8 of which are nonprofit small businesses, technical assistance groups that provide direct aid in helping city businesses identify programs and funding sources and complete online applications. The other 11 are community-based organizations with strong ties to underserved neighborhoods and Black-owned businesses that support outreach and refer businesses into the network. The network has served over 1,100 businesses so far, including many city businesses that have struggled to access resources and assistance, providing responsive and high-quality technical assistance. Baltimore Together should also work to expand successful efforts to invest in entrepreneurial opportunities for Black people and other people of color, as demonstrated by Innovation Works, Baltimore Creatives Acceleration Network, the Startup Nest, the City of Baltimore Small Business Resource Center, and Conscious Venture Labs, incubator programs led by people of color. Finally, Baltimore should develop an initiative to support lending to minority small businesses that have low credit scores and/or other barriers to traditional lending. Government funds that are used to make loans directly to small businesses could instead be used as a guarantee or loan loss reserve that could leverage capital from the private sector, resulting in a much larger small business loan fund. In this arrangement, the City of Baltimore and the State of Maryland would use funds to serve as a guarantor for working capital loans by backstopping private lending described as a loan loss reserve. The loan loss reserve could represent 10% or 20% of an overall small business loan fund that would be capitalized by local banks and foundations and managed by local CDFIs and other nonprofits like Baltimore Business Lending, LEDC, and Innovation Works. In this model, for example, $5 million in Baltimore City and state funds could leverage a $50 million loan fund. Banks and other private sector investors often identify the need for first loss capital as a major hurdle in contributing to a high-risk loan pool. Using city and state funds as first loss capital addresses the obstacle and will create the guarantees needed by banks and others to invest in a small business loan fund. The Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development is providing this type of loan loss reserve to the loan fund of the Baltimore Business Lending, which is the small business lending arm of the Baltimore Community Lending. But much greater scale could be achieved by bringing in additional city and state funds to a loss reserve and bringing together several CDFIs to administer a larger fund. This loan loss reserve should be created with new public funds and not replace direct lending programs by Baltimore City and the state of Maryland, which are well utilized and much needed. A concerted small business strategy should work to do the following: improve training and technical assistance by expanding the BDC Coordinated Technical Assistance Network to better focus on businesses owned by African American, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, and women with such things as lending, payroll taxes, and legal infrastructure. Expand access to financing, especially to businesses owned by African American, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, and women, including seed capital, equity, and growth capital. Expand access to mentors for Black and brown business owners. Create accelerators to advance businesses in growth clusters. Target small businesses that are creating living wage career paths as distinct from mainly low-wage, low-skilled retail positions. Provide support to businesses owned by immigrants by providing, for example, interpretation and translation services. Support the efforts of community development financial institutions, credit unions, and community banks by providing capital to businesses owned by African American, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, and women. Work with partners to create a first loss capital pool that CDFIs and others can tap into and that can attract additional loan capital for small businesses. Develop the use of tools such as Baltimore SourceLink to better coordinate resources within the resource provider network. Communicate success stories and practical advice in a formal, consistent manner using a range of channels to reach entrepreneurs. Meet the need of affordable office space between incubator space and Class A office space. Create and preserve affordable, quality, light industrial space for small manufacturers. Next step. Baltimore Together will convert and expand the small business work group's scope to advise on an improved small business support system. Next step. Explore in more detail recommendations contained in the 21st Century Cities Initiative 2018 White Paper, Financing Baltimore's Growth, Strengthening Lending to Small Businesses, which lays out 5 recommendations. Each recommendation should be considered along with specific implementation actions. We want to reach early stage and small businesses who care about Baltimore and represent its diversity. Our diverse skills and perspectives are a strength. We need to show local residents and businesses that they are seen, understood, and matter. Michelle Geist, Impact Hub. Workforce delivery. Baltimore is fortunate to have many strong organizations that seek to help connect job seekers and employers. While well-intentioned, This has led to a fragmented system that sometimes leaves job seekers unable to access the services and training they need, and employers unable to identify the best organizations to help them support their interest in accessing the strongest pool of talent. The Baltimore Workforce Development Board, supported by MOED, is poised to play the lead role in coordinating the workforce system. Baltimore Workforce Development Board is led by business representatives working with labor groups, training organizations, educational institutions, and philanthropy. It is also responsible for management and oversight of federal, state, and Baltimore City funds allocated for workforce development. All of its board meetings are open to the public, providing transparency, and non-board members are given the opportunity to participate in discussions and committee meetings. Baltimore Workforce Development Board and MOED developed Vision 2020 to increase alignment within the workforce system so that support services and training programs are consistent with both residents' needs and employer expectations. To be most successful, Vision 2020 requires stakeholders to commit to a shared set of values including collaboration, data sharing, career pathways that yield family-supporting wages, and the systematic reform necessary to undo decades of racism. There is a strong need to align economic and workforce development efforts. For example, Invest Atlanta, the city's economic development authority, is moving the city's workforce development function under its umbrella to ensure better coordination. While consolidation may not be the right path for Baltimore, there should be an alignment with BDC and MOED. Next step, support and refine a workforce individual data system. Next step, expand and strengthen the practice advisory. Next step, realign systems. Next step, BDC and MOED will consider methods to better connect workforce development and economic development to move forward in integrated talent. Next step, BDC and MOED will consider methods to better connect workforce development and economic development to move towards an integrated talent development strategy. Regular sessions will be convened to compare strategies and outcomes. Aggregate Maryland's higher education data to share with existing and prospective businesses looking to hire college-educated workers. The region is rich with colleges and universities, but BDC and its partners can do more to help employers learn about and connect with the graduates being produced. This will help them meet their hiring needs and convince more new graduates to move to or continue living in Baltimore City. Next step. BDC has worked with the Maryland Department of Commerce to gather this data and will collaborate with Baltimore College Town to organize it in a user-friendly format. BDC will share this data with businesses and other partners to help tell this positive narrative.
Baltimore Together strategies. Number 2, invest in people and places. Our goal is to give every Baltimore resident and business owner the opportunity to succeed, but many have been left out of the mainstream economy through systemic racism and discrimination. We must work intentionally to combat and reverse this by creating new opportunities for economic advancement and wealth building in African American, Latino and Hispanic, Asian, and American Indian communities. Our goal should be to give every person access to resources to elevate their economic situation, from education and career training to capital and technical assistance. Baltimore can be on the forefront of innovative, people-focused strategies. One of Baltimore's leading companies, Catalyte, is leading workforce solutions and career training in the field of data science. Using artificial intelligence, Catalyte is able to transform lives and communities by enabling individuals to start new careers in tech regardless of education or skill level. Catalyte can test for aptitude without bias through its objective algorithmic test. This approach is paving the way to match individuals with careers best suited for their abilities without traditional barriers of education, age, race, or gender. Along with strategies focused on people, we also need efforts focused strategically on specific communities. Many of Baltimore's neighborhoods have not seen investment in decades. The reality is that there are not enough resources or market-driven demand to turn around every distressed neighborhood in Baltimore in the short term. However, we cannot continue to allow disinvested communities to decline. Public and private resources should be used strategically to follow market-driven trends to invest in specific neighborhoods that are poised for positive change. We need new investments in communities of color that have strong local leaders, assets to help generate growth, and a thoughtful revitalization strategy. Increase the amount and equity of local investment. Baltimore has some sources of locally organized capital, such as Blueprint Local, the Neighborhood Impact Investment Fund, Maryland Technology Development Corporation, Maryland Momentum Fund, Baltimore Angels, Propel Baltimore, Squadra Ventures, and Early Light Ventures, but we must expand the supply. Bruce Katz, co-author of The New Localism, argues that local pension and endowment funds should be invested locally rather than exported to Silicon Valley and Cambridge-focused venture capital funds. Baltimore investors are often exporting wealth or venture capital funds to a handful of affluent global cities, leaving important initiatives and businesses in Baltimore City unfunded. There is a great need for additional local investment funds that can organize local family wealth offices, foundations, pensions, and endowments to redirect investment into Baltimore investment opportunities. With global investment firms located in Baltimore, like T. Rowe Price and Brown Advisory, BDC will convene a think tank group to determine how to accomplish this goal. Next step, coordinate Baltimore City investments with partners such as NIF, Baltimore Community Lending, and other CDFIs to concentrate catalytic investment in disinvested neighborhoods. Investments will be aligned with the DHCD framework. Next step, BDC and NIF should work together to document existing local funds being invested in Baltimore City, such as Blueprint Local, compared to the amount of local capital invested elsewhere, and determine a goal that the broader investment community should set for local investment over the next 5 years. A commitment by local social capital investors could then be sought and tracked. Strengthen the local retail industry. Next step, in coordination with the mayoral transition team, an evaluation of the Main Streets and Retail Business District license, leveraging investments in neighborhood corridors, and other city local retail programs should be conducted to determine how to make the programs more effective and make recommendations about funding and where the programs should reside within Baltimore City government. Next step, improve communication between retail programs and merchants associations. Commit to working through strategies tailored for these corridors where the community planning process established the strategies. Enhance the neighborhood focus of development efforts. Baltimore Department of Housing and Community Development has designated certain areas of the city as initial impact investment areas, neighborhoods that offer near-term opportunities to achieve inclusive, economically sustainable growth supported by a comprehensive city strategy and major public investments. As these areas stabilize and grow, they will serve as strong community assets that will help fuel subsequent transformational development in adjacent communities. They are generally low-income areas with challenging market conditions, but are posed for positive, inclusive transformation. The neighborhood clusters have a base of stable residents, rich history, strong community groups, committed for-profit and nonprofit partners, and a growing capacity to engage in redevelopment efforts. In each, DHCD has had an opportunity to assemble a critical mass of vacant properties, including major sites for redevelopment. An initial list of key communities that have strong existing assets and are primed for new investments include West Baltimore. The West Baltimore Gateway is a group of established community organizations, Druid Heights Community Development, Penn North Community Association, Pennsylvania Avenue Main Street, and Upton Planning Committee, including the Black Arts and Entertainment District established in 2019. The Gateways area encompasses mass transit access and vacant land along historic Pennsylvania Avenue. East Baltimore, located immediately north of the East Baltimore Development Initiative and Johns Hopkins Medical Campus, Southern Baptist Church and community leaders are leading redevelopment efforts in a focus area that covers 280 acres. A report and master plan were accepted by the Baltimore City Planning Commission in 2017. Many projects have been completed and new ones are underway, such as efforts by Rebuild Johnston Square, American Communities Trust, Broadway East, and East North Avenue CDCs, to name a few, and the city's movement of vacant properties through receivership and tax sale and significant blight remediation. Park Heights and Pimlico. The planned redevelopment of Pimlico Racecourse has an approved funding stream and will help generate new economic activity in the surrounding communities. Park Heights is the site of a range of ongoing community development activities, including public safety initiatives, social services, and real estate development supported by Park Heights Renaissance. South Baltimore Gateway. A 2015 master plan laid out the vision for renewed development in 14 neighborhoods, taking advantage of existing assets, including extensive waterfront. This master plan area is supported by local impact aid generated by the Horseshoe Casino to fund the South Baltimore Gateway Partnership, which is spearheading many of the community development projects. Southwest Baltimore. The Southwest Partnership is a coalition of 7 neighborhood associations and 6 anchor institutions. Its focus area includes the neighborhoods of Berry Circle, Franklin Square, Hollins Roundhouse, Mount Clair, Pigtown, Poppleton, and Union Square. The area is home to the University of Maryland Biotech Park, Hollins Park, and the nearby Grace Medical Campus. Next step. Working through the mayor's neighborhood subcabinet, a priority project or action for each area should be identified and included in the Baltimore Together metrics and reporting. Next step. Create and prioritize an inventory of people-based strategies in Baltimore that are related to economic and workforce development to include in the Baltimore Together report. Next step. Invest in and help implement job programs, including a recovery plan for the retail sector to support the Department of Housing and Community Development's framework. Next step. Develop office space and amenities to attract major employers and preserve light industrial and industrial mixed-use zones walkable to residential areas in communities with high unemployment by implementing transformative placemaking strategies identified by Brookings Institutions, Ann T., and Robert M. Bass Center for Transformative Placemaking. The center aims to inspire public, private, and civic sector leaders to make transformative place investments that generate widespread social and economic benefits.
Baltimore Together strategies. 3. Build from strength. Too often, plans focus on deficits instead of strengths. This process has been a reminder that Baltimore has considerable economic strength and social assets to support an inclusive growth strategy. Our universities have a robust patent and technology transfer activity, as well as a focus on startup and enterprise formation. We have a philanthropic community that stewards billions of dollars in assets with a focus on community issues across Maryland. We are home to world-class healthcare and educational institutions, and sectors from our economy such as logistics and cybersecurity are strong. Our location, port, and transportation systems are attractive to business, and Baltimore City has many affordable communities. These assets create economic opportunities, and we should identify and work toward audacious goals that build from our strengths. These should include the following: leverage the desire of young people and entrepreneurs to solve civic and social challenges by making Baltimore the social innovation capital of the world. Today, we see a range of nonprofits and for-profit entities that are advancing new approaches to social issues. Let's take advantage of that momentum, create synergy, and encourage growth in that sector. Leverage technology to better coordinate the many disparate technical assistance resources known and hidden in the region, including, for example, SourceLink and EcoMap. Build on our world-class healthcare infrastructure and make Baltimore the leader in early cancer detection. Capitalize on our strong logistics and transportation networks to make Baltimore a hub for global supply chain logistics solutions. This sector has a higher number of jobs that pay a living wage and often do not require post-secondary education, a major need in Baltimore. Tap into our highly educated workforce, an existing sector, to make Baltimore the capital of cybersecurity innovation. Build on the energy and opportunities to make Baltimore a mecca for African American, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, and American Indian and women entrepreneurship. This will require a concerted effort to build and strengthen business networks, expand access to capital, and provide technical support. Build the energy from a positive, forward-looking narrative about diversity and authenticity in Baltimore City. Tap into the assets of people returning to Baltimore after incarceration and invest in efforts that promote entrepreneurship and workforce participation. A 2017 report by the ABLE Foundation examined the costs of incarceration in Maryland and the benefits of providing effective education and work programs to people who are in prison. New investments in programs to support returning citizens before and after they leave incarceration would help more of them avoid recidivism, prepare for new jobs, and help to meet labor needs in the city and region. R3Score is a financial analysis tool created to de-risk and demonstrate the strengths and capabilities of people with criminal records, providing an accurate assessment of actual readiness and reputation without the bias that is inherent in traditional scores used by lenders and employers. Leverage our creative industries as valuable export economies that can attract wealth and shape a more vibrant narrative for Baltimore City. Continue to invest in the economic strength of downtown Baltimore. Baltimore must do more to lift up and celebrate thriving companies that are contributing to the city's success. We can start by establishing a network of selected companies that are demonstrating excellent results or potential, and then organize public and private support to maximize their opportunity for success and scalability. Another area of need is attracting talent at all levels of support growth industries, especially CEO recruitment. Baltimore has great startups, but often lacks the senior leaders that venture capital firms demand. That can lead to companies going elsewhere or startups struggling to recruit world-class talent. This situation is not isolated to startups, but to medium, large, and global firms in Baltimore. A systematic, scripted recruitment protocol and other strategies need to be developed to ensure that talented business leaders are aware of Baltimore's tremendous positive attributes and not just a perceived narrative of blight and violence. Building a coalition in South Baltimore. The SB7 Coalition is an example of an inclusive strategy working to strengthen the economy and build social assets. SB7 Coalition is composed of the South Baltimore 6 communities of Brooklyn, Cherry Hill, Curtis Bay, Lakeland, Mount Winans, and Westport, along with the developer of the Port Covenant Project on the South Baltimore's waterfronts. Developer Weller Development Company. This coalition is facilitating the delivery of economic, educational, cultural, environmental, and social community benefits associated with the redevelopment of Port Covington under the terms of a community benefits agreement. Quote, I think it's powerful to connect anchor institutions to one another for shared collaboration around economic growth. This group is a great first step, and I hope the strategic plan has an even broader audience of corporate stakeholders. End quote. Elise Liberto, Brown Advisory. Next step, BDC will convene a focus group of leaders from Innovation Works, Impact Hub, Hack Baltimore, Conscious Venture Labs, The Grid, Emerging Technology Center, ETC, the Johns Hopkins Social Innovation Lab, Morgan State University's Graves School of Business, and other entities to develop targets and actions to make Baltimore the social innovation capital of the world. The goal is to have a specific plan to include in the final Baltimore Together document. Next step, BDC and Live Baltimore will work together to develop marketing materials for recruiting CEOs. It will include testimonials from other CEOs who have relocated to Baltimore. The GBC will assist by using its board of directors to provide feedback and suggestions on how to communicate Baltimore's positive attributes to executives that are considering a move to Baltimore. Next step, BDC will identify leaders and organizations to form a majority Black-led advisory committee on how best to support Black-owned businesses. The committee should include and potentially be led by the Mayor's Office of Small, Minority, and Women-Owned Business. It is important that both advocacy organizations and service providers like banks and CDFIs be represented in the committee. The committee should build on past and existing efforts to support Black-owned businesses. One specific action of the advisory committee would be to focus on an idea to scale pipeline as a way to create wealth in the Black community in a similar manner to that of Innovation Works. Next step, BDC and the Maryland Department of Commerce will work together to identify 25 companies that are poised for significant growth. Once identified, an outreach plan will be developed to ensure those companies have access to city, state, and other business resources and programs. Next step, in partnership with Maryland Philanthropy Network, build a mechanism for inclusion of local and national philanthropic communities to participate in investment strategies outlined in Baltimore Together. Next step, establish a robust mentor-led program as part of business assistance, which provides exposure to role models and strengthens ties among self-employed individuals.
Baltimore Together strategies, sector-based strategies. Baltimore must expand efforts to build on our strengths to support and expand key industry sectors. For each of the industry sectors listed, BDC will convene a work group of business leaders to undertake a process of setting growth targets and action plans based on the data gathered through Baltimore Together. These target and action plans will be included in the final report. Next step, make sure that sector strategies are aligned with regional workforce job training programs and support services identified below. Support dedicated job developers in key industry clusters. Next step, implement intentional strategies to develop Black and Brown-owned businesses in key industry clusters. Strategies for 5 key sectors are detailed here. Next step, industrial, manufacturing, and logistics. This sector faces unique challenges operating in an urban area. Special consideration should be given to policies that affect this sector more acutely, such as property tax rates, stormwater fees, truck routes, and policies that may hinder Baltimore's competitiveness to keep and grow these businesses compared to suburban and/or rural jurisdictions with lower costs and less regulation. Despite overall contraction in manufacturing jobs over the last decade, this industry remains critical to furthering inclusive economic growth. Certain subsectors have experienced growth, including meat processing, packaging, and breweries, and now personal protective equipment production as well. Growth is largely driven by warehousing and cargo movement in and out of Baltimore by multiple modes of transportation. This growth creates an opportunity for Baltimore to become a supply chain and logistics capital, which extends beyond the immediate port and positions Baltimore as an export and import hub for the broader Mid-Atlantic region. Supply chains. With COVID-19 changing supply chains, we must understand ongoing shifts in how these chains develop and operate and take advantage of opportunities to build supply chains that tap into businesses around the region. Becoming a supply chain and logistics capital will require maintaining reliable truck routes and heavyweight corridors and marketing of Baltimore as a supply chain solution. Foreign markets. BDC needs to partner even more closely with the Maryland Department of Commerce, the Maryland Port Administration, and the U.S. Export Assistance Center to promote Baltimore exports and foreign business attraction, especially in light industrial sectors. Strategically, target foreign direct investment and business attraction success in cybersecurity and biotech, and then expand this investment to other industries. BDC and the Maryland Department of Commerce should partner to develop a preferred Baltimore tour for foreign executives and investors. Procurement. Anchor institutions, including local government, hospitals, museums, and universities, need to commit to increasing their procurement spending on locally made products, allowing local manufacturers to invest in expansion and become more competitive with overseas manufacturers. This builds on the work of the Baltimore Integration Partnership, Collectively We Rise, and other programs such as Hopkins Local. Next step, life sciences. Baltimore has the potential to become the cancer diagnostic capital for the world. The amount of bioscience research spin-offs from Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland has increased dramatically over the past decade and is poised to grow even more so due to the COVID-19 pandemic investigative work. However, getting new bioresearch and biomanufacturing companies to locate within Baltimore City requires direct action. Develop transitional wet lab space to initially house firms before they move to a permanent home. Develop a specific plan with location, size, and source of funds by the end of 2021, with the implementation by the end of 2022. Possible sites include Baltimore City-owned one-story school buildings, 1100 Wicomico in the South Baltimore Gateway Partnership funding area, and the BDC-owned space in the west side of downtown. Enhance and strengthen apprenticeship training programs for biomanufacturing employees. This manufacturing is likely to stay in Baltimore if the workforce can be developed. Explore creation of an accelerator program like those in Massachusetts and Philadelphia, which will bring capital, technical help, and mentorship to support businesses. Work with Maryland Technology Council to strengthen a CEO's roundtable for owners of biotech companies in the Baltimore region so that companies can help each other grow, establish supply chains, and partner with Baltimore City and the region to develop a narrative that highlights our educated workforce in collaboration with the Baltimore College Town Network and exciting research and product development opportunities. Support growth of digital health companies in Baltimore and the region by retaining and attracting businesses and investment in this emerging field. Next step, technology. Growth in the cybersecurity sector is limited by the lack of startup capital, the need for more trained graduates in the field, and Baltimore's reputation among young cybersecurity graduates. Cybersecurity in Baltimore City is more of a workforce opportunity than a company formation opportunity, with the potential to supply many workers to the cybersecurity industry, even if those jobs are not located in Baltimore City. 80% of college grads in Maryland in cybersecurity are international students, although 80% at Morgan State University are U.S.-born. BDC, the Maryland Department of Commerce, and the Cybersecurity Association of Maryland will partner with the Baltimore College Town Network to overcome these growth constraints to make the Baltimore region the cybersecurity center for the nation. Work with companies to close the talent gap and scale software innovation using AI and data science by discovering high-performing talent from local communities. Catalyte is an example of a company that is setting new and different standards for intake of employees in the cyber industry. Support the animation and gaming sectors, creating opportunities to attract more employers in the field.
Baltimore Together strategies. Number 4, compete to succeed. Baltimore faces a series of challenges that create competitive imbalances that hold the city back. Areas that require focused attention are detailed here. Work to increase population. An important objective of the City of Baltimore is stimulating inclusive economic growth in the face of continued population decline, economic disinvestment, and racial inequality. Strategies that increase the number of people living in Baltimore City are essential to economic growth, especially as it's shown to produce broadly distributed benefits. Density and diversity of people in one place is what makes cities unique and drives regions. and residential growth strategies are vital to securing a vibrant economy, a growing tax base, and a flourishing community. A residential growth strategy has been completed along with a study measuring the economic and physical effects of newcomers. A draft was shared and discussed with the Community and Real Estate Investment Work Group. The final study will be posted on the Baltimore Together website. The residential growth strategy has buy-in from Baltimore City agencies, including Departments of Finance, Housing and Community Development, and Planning, as well as Live Baltimore and BDC. It will be critical to brief incoming elected officials to solicit support and alignment with the strategy. Next step, provide in-depth briefing of the strategy for the mayor, comptroller, and city council president by Baltimore City agencies involved in its creation. Next step, coordinate Baltimore City investment in disinvested neighborhoods with Live Baltimore, Baltimore City Housing and Community Development, and Baltimore City Department of Planning's residential strategies. Reduce taxes and fees. Baltimore City needs a better balance between spending on immediate issues, such as fighting crime, and investing to confront systemic, expensive issues that will lead to an expanded tax base and increased employment. A key step is to develop a plan to reduce real property taxes and codify it in the Baltimore City Charter through a referendum. Tell an authentic Baltimore story. Baltimore's narrative is often driven by news media accounts and popular culture focused on crime and poverty. It's time for Baltimore to reclaim its story and share a positive, forward-looking narrative nationally. The authentic Baltimore is complex. It needs to not only show its livability and cultural richness, but also admit its challenges and the resiliency of its people. There is untapped potential in telling the stories about diversity and authenticity in Baltimore City. Developing and sharing a new narrative must include groups that have not been included in the past. Messaging also needs to focus on our business and academic powerhouses of research, medicine, and entrepreneur development, highlighting our educated workforce and our city's exciting employment opportunities. Let's transform the Baltimore narrative and rebrand this city. That is a quote from Danielle Laurencho from Baltimore City Government. Next step, collaborate with local Baltimore talent to promote the authentic Baltimore experience. Next step, invest in our creative industry's storytellers, writers, filmmakers, artists, musicians, empowering them to gain bigger platforms, reaching people all across the country and the world. Next step, collaborate with our business and academic powerhouses of research, medicine, and entrepreneur development to develop a Baltimore narrative that highlights our educated workforce and exciting employment opportunities. This could also include collaboration with the Baltimore College Town Network. Next step, using Visit Baltimore's new campaign to attract visitors as a guide, BDC and Live Baltimore will collaborate with Visit Baltimore to adopt similar marketing materials to promote business and residential growth, respectively. Address structural challenges. Baltimore Together must continue to work with others to address other challenges that inhibit Baltimore's economic vitality. Public safety. We must continue to improve all aspects of our public safety system. The Baltimore Police Department came under intense scrutiny following the in-custody death of Freddie Gray in 2015. An ensuing U.S. Department of Justice investigation led to a federal consent decree, a court-enforced agreement to resolve findings that the Baltimore City Police Department, BPD, had engaged in unlawful pattern and practice of conduct. The BPD is taking ongoing steps to address the findings in the consent decree, a key step towards strengthening community trust and improving public safety. Public education. The Kerwin Commission legislation to reform public education and provide new resources will be a significant factor in improving Baltimore City public schools. Infrastructure. We must work with state and federal partners to continue to upgrade our infrastructure systems. Broadband. Foster creativity and competition in our broadband network. This should include changing Baltimore City's conduit policy to make fiber installation less expensive. Digital equity. We must address the reality that many Baltimore households lack two essential tools for getting online: broadband service at home and access to a computer. According to the 2018 American Community Survey, 96,000 households in Baltimore, that's 40.7%, did not have wired internet service, and some 75,000 Baltimore City households, or 1 in 3, do not have either a desktop or laptop computer. In an increasingly digital world, this lack of access affects a growing number of essential activities, from homework to job searches to benefit applications. For many lower-income households and communities of color, the lack of internet or a computer is compounding gaps in educational attainment and financial security, especially during remote instruction during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mobility. Baltimore City and the region have a strong overall transportation network. However, many workers face challenges reaching jobs. The 2017 American Community Survey by the U.S. Census found the Baltimore metropolitan area to have the 7th longest commute time at nearly 32 minutes when compared to other major metropolitan areas. The Opportunity Collaborative's Barriers to Employment 2019 survey found numerous other issues that job seekers face related to transportation. For example, the survey found that people who rely on public transit will face greater difficulty in accessing jobs. It found that over 85% of new jobs between 2018 and 2028 will be created outside of Baltimore City. Persons without their own vehicle will face greater issues in being able to find opportunities for employment. Other groups, such as the Central Maryland Transportation Alliance, have produced reports detailing worker connectivity issues. These groups, among others, have identified transit issues such as the ability to connect workers to job centers, cost of transit, length of commute time, transit reliability, the need to link multiple modes of transit to reach employment opportunities. Improvements to the Baltimore public transit system is a vital requirement for building an equitable economy.
Metrics. Measuring improvements in Baltimore City's economy regarding both growth and inclusion is an essential component of the Baltimore Together plan. Accountability in implementing the plan will be based on a broad set of metrics identified here. The final strategic plan will identify commitments by stakeholders to implement, metrics for success, and a timeline for implementation. Each of these metrics can be influenced by actions taken to fulfill components of the Baltimore Together plan. Growth. Measuring growth in Baltimore City economy. Population. Focus on the middle class. Foreign-born. Employment and jobs. Rate compared to regional, state, and national rates. Number of jobs in companies or institutions with fewer than 500 employees. Number of jobs in select business sectors. Cybersecurity, bioresearch, port, etc. Number of jobs in impact areas, as defined in DHCD's framework, may not be trackable every year. Census provides info, but there is a lag. Percentage of jobs that are family-sustaining. Yearly job growth. Median personal income in constant dollars. Local gross domestic product. Annual amount of venture capital invested in Baltimore businesses. Annual amount of loans to businesses with revenue under $1 million. Business loans per neighborhood. Dollar value of exports. Number of patents issued per 1,000 workers in Baltimore City. New business establishment created, BGE seed applications. Number of establishments surviving 5 years, state-level data only. Percentage of sole proprietors. Equity. Measuring progress in making the Baltimore economy more equitable. Median income gap, white, black. BA degree gap, white, black. Employment gap, white, black. Wealth gap, white, black. Wealth gap, foreign-born, native. Percentage of black-owned businesses. Percentage of businesses, employees, and revenue by race of business ownership. Percentage of businesses owned by women and minority women. Location of businesses. Hispanic, Latinx-owned businesses. Asian American-owned businesses. The Baltimore Together Equity and Inclusion Committee will make recommendations about these metrics. Next steps. Talent. Measuring the growth in quantity and quality of Baltimore's talent base. Net growth of 25 to 34-year-olds. Percentage of workforce employed in advanced industries. Census estimates. Admissions and enrollment data. Population 25 and above with an associate's degree or higher. Population 25 and above with bachelor's degree or higher. 3-year graduation rate at 2-year institutions, community colleges. 6-year graduation rate at 4-year institutions. Transfer rates from community colleges to four-year college. Population 25 and above with bachelor's degree or higher. Licenses, certifications, and target industry groups driving growth and wealth. Percentage of Baltimore workers living and working in Baltimore City. Infrastructure. Measuring essential infrastructure conditions for a 21st century economy. Percent of population with access to advertised broadband speed of 1 gigabyte or higher. Highway miles rated in good condition. Bridges that are rated poor.
Next steps. The public can help shape Baltimore Together in 2021. January 2021, Baltimore Together formally launches. January 2021, interim report posted for work group comment and feedback. January to March 2021, continued development of the strategic plan. April to May 2021, broad public engagement through events and other feedback channels. June 2021, strategic plan completed, posted for comment and feedback. 21 through 2026, stakeholders work collaboratively to implement the pieces of Baltimore Together, constantly reviewing metrics for success. Quote, "The success of the plan requires it to be a truly living document, with every stakeholder being fully invested in its success, and to have the political will to achieve these results." Unquote. Will Dorfman, Downtown Partnership of Baltimore.
Appendix 1. Data. This section includes data charts highlighting some key findings about the Baltimore economy. Population by race. 2010, 2018. Change between 2010 and 2018. Households by income. Baltimore City, 2010 to 2018. Cumulative job growth since 2010 by residents of worker. Net new jobs since 2010 to 2017. Businesses with employees. Excludes non-employers by race of ownership as of 2012. Non-employers meaning sole proprietors. Total sales and revenue. All businesses, non-employers and businesses with employees as of 2012. All businesses as of 2012, including non-employers, by race and ownership. Private employment between 2013 to 2018. Geography of Baltimore City, Baltimore Metro, Maryland. Total jobs over time by business size. Between 2010 to 2018, 500 and greater employees, under 500 employees.
Appendix 2, COVID-19, Recovery Efforts and Small Business Assistance. The coronavirus pandemic has led to a wide and deep economic disruption in Baltimore. The unemployment rate jumped significantly from about 5% in January to 9.3% as of August. Many restaurants, stores, and other businesses were forced to close permanently, with more closings likely to come, and many other enterprises took a financial hit. Along with financial support from the federal government, Baltimore City leaders from government and the private and philanthropic sectors are working to mitigate the COVID-19 impact, as well as develop plans for a longer-term recovery. Mayor Bernard C. Jack Young established a COVID-19 Small Business Task Force, a public-private partnership supported by BDC, to coordinate the City of Baltimore's resources and assist small businesses with resources and guidelines. Other key steps taken include these. BDC and Baltimore City established a Small Business Assistance Fund to provide grants to help businesses cope with the economic fallout from the pandemic. Selection criteria were established to ensure that funds were targeted to certain Baltimore communities that have suffered from long-term disinvestment and awarded largely to firms owned by minorities, women, and Baltimore City residents, an essential step to support both small and vulnerable businesses that often struggle to obtain financial support. In all, $3.5 million was awarded in 398 small grants, with 74% going to minority-owned businesses and 68% to women-owned businesses. A full 73% of the grants were made to businesses owned by a Baltimore City resident. On average, each business had laid off about 2/3 of their employees. Baltimore City, BDC, and several partners moved quickly to establish a support network to help small businesses respond to the economic challenges from the COVID-19 outbreak. BDC and the Baltimore Small Business Support Fund, which is supported by several area philanthropies and corporations, worked together to create a technical assistance network tapping into several organizations around Baltimore City to help connect businesses to resources. A special focus of the public-private partnership is to reach small, minority, and women-owned businesses, especially those that have not in the past interacted with Baltimore City agencies. With 1,100 businesses having received assistance, the partnership has proven successful at reaching and supporting small businesses, and work is underway to sustain the support network moving forward to help and expand the small business sector in Baltimore over the long term. With many small manufacturers affected by the pandemic, BDC took action to help local businesses switch over to make critically needed personal protective equipment, or PPE, for area institutions and individuals. Working with BDC's Made in Baltimore campaign, BDC allocated $150,000 to a PPE fund that made grants up to $15,000 to local firms. 16 businesses, ranging from a specialty soap maker to a maker of canvas tote bags, used the money to convert to PPE production, securing jobs and meeting a major public health need. Another $500,000 in grants will be provided to Baltimore makers and manufacturers producing PPE, and for Baltimore City to purchase PPE from these manufacturers for our first responders. Read more about some of the participating firms on the Made in Baltimore website. With $1.5 million in Baltimore City funding, BDC and Neighborhood Design Center, NDC, are leading Design for Distancing, Reopening Baltimore Together, a tactical urban design initiative intended to help small businesses reopen without compromising public health. The effort will encompass over a dozen selected districts across Baltimore City, including current and former Main Streets, retail business licensing districts, and arts and entertainment districts identified as priority areas for the Small Business Assistance Fund grant program. In partnership with Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, experts, and local stakeholders, BDC and NDC launched a design competition brief and selected winning designers to create a digital pattern book containing the winning designs, along with additional resources made available for download to anyone in the world to utilize. The effort led to public space reconfigurations in select Baltimore City districts. Each district was paired with a local design build team to plan, develop, and implement public space interventions in August. Participating districts are Bel Air Edison, Brooklyn, East Monument Street, Federal Hill, Govinstown, Hamilton Lauraville, Hamden, Highlandtown, Hollands Market, Market Center, Midtown Station North, Mount Washington, Old Town Mall, Pennsylvania Avenue, Pigtown, Pimlico, and Waverly. Collaborative Technical Assistance Network. A group of Baltimore City agencies and philanthropic supporters partnered to engage and assist small businesses and nonprofits, with a focus on those owned or run by minorities located in under-resourced neighborhoods, including opportunity zones, as they navigate the pandemic. BDC and the Mayor's Office of Minority and Women-Owned Businesses are working with the Baltimore Small Business Support Fund to administer a network of business assistance organizations called the Baltimore Small Business Technical Assistance Partnership that supports businesses and nonprofit leaders as they complete applications for federal and state programs, as well as philanthropic financial assistance programs. BDC plays the role of network coordinator by receiving requests for assistance and then assigning businesses to the provider that can best meet their needs. All businesses receiving services are tracked in a centralized database, which helps to avoid duplication of effort and provide valuable data on the types of businesses being served, including industry, number of employees, and race and ethnicity of the business owner, and the results in applying for and accessing funds. The network partners communicate regularly via a weekly conference call and share information and technical assistance resources. The network uses its scale and citywide reach to develop partnerships with other organizations to better serve businesses. For example, the network has developed protocols for working directly with community development financial institution lenders like Lendistry and LEDC, which is a network partner, to connect businesses with lenders and help address any hurdles in the application process. The network has also developed partnerships with specialized technical assistance providers and other organizations such as law firms that can receive referrals and/or can provide information to the network partners to help improve the delivery of technical assistance. Providing technical assistance are these entities funded by the Baltimore Small Business Support Fund, Baltimore Community Lending, Baltimore Corps, Impact Hub Baltimore, Innovation Works, Latino Economic Development Center, Earl G. Graves School of Business and Management at Morgan State University, the Municipal Employees Credit Union, or MECU. Referrals to the Technical Assistance Network come from these organizations: the Baltimore Creatives Acceleration Network, or BCAN, Baltimore Roundtable for Economic Democracy, or BRED, collectively, Greater Baltimore Black Chamber of Commerce, Highlandtown Merchants Association, Job Opportunities Task Force, JOTF, Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, Made in Baltimore, Pennsylvania Avenue Black Arts District, Southeast CDC, and the Startup Nest. The hospitality industry, one of Baltimore's largest job sectors, is suffering major damage from the pandemic shutdown. Visit Baltimore has led the development of a thoughtful, long-term plan to bolster the sector's recovery. It includes a range of strategies, including a new marketing effort to reintroduce Baltimore and attract visitors to the area, job fairs to help hospitality workers regain employment, a Welcome Back to Baltimore celebration, and the establishment of a gold standard certification for health and cleanliness for Baltimore hotels and restaurants. In a statement, Visit Baltimore President and CEO Al Hutchinson said, "Visit Baltimore will partner with state and local agencies and organizations to roll out a plan that will boost regional tourism, encourage overnight hotel stays, and regular repeat visitation to our attractions and cultural sites."
Appendix 3, Stakeholder Engagement. Baltimore Together has partnered over several months with a range of stakeholders from government, business, and the nonprofit sector to create an inclusive economic development strategy. Key engagement activities included November 2019 through January 2020, 10 work groups and committees held 27 meetings to examine aspects of the economy with more than 290 participants. May 2020. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, virtual recap meetings with work groups and committees convened to share initial findings and ideas. June 2020. Virtual presentations to community and real estate work group from a consultant studying a residential growth strategy. June 2020. Virtual presentation to the Technical Advisory Committee and BDC staff by experts on economic impact of COVID-19. July 2020. Virtual presentation to the Strategy and Technical Advisory Committees of the Residential Growth Strategy. August 2020. Formation and virtual convening of the Baltimore Together Equity and Inclusion Committee. August 2020. Draft interim report shared with work group participants on virtual platform. Feedback gathered and incorporated into the interim report.